is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well so far on this frigid Tuesday morning. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with organizational updates. We are going to have our post-election housing policy update webinar this Wednesday, so tomorrow, December 4th at 1:30 p.m. We're going to be discussing how new federal and state administrations might impact housing policy and resources in North Carolina, as well as our response and highlights from our 2025-2026 policy agenda, and how you can join us in the movement to protect housing investments in 2025 and beyond. Speakers are going to include Kim Johnson of the National Low Income Housing Coalition, our Executive Director, Samuel Gunter, and myself. So if you are interested in registering, we'll have the link in the call notes for you. Moving on to federal updates, Congress is back in session after the Thanksgiving break. Between now and December 20th, they'll be working to negotiate and pass a disaster aid package, as well as a continuing resolution to keep the government funded and avoid a partial shutdown. We'll have more information as we learn more, and we have kind of an in-depth overview of what we think might happen in the call notes for you as well. Many of you might know that Scott Turner has been selected to be the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So President-elect Donald Trump has selected Scott Turner to serve as a secretary. During his first administration, during the first Trump administration, Turner led the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, which Trump established to target, streamline, and coordinate federal resources to be used in opportunity zones and other economically distressed communities. Moving on to state updates. So the General Assembly was back in session yesterday afternoon. The North Carolina Senate, in particular, voted to override the governor's veto of Senate Bill 382. This bill, they actually passed a conference report the last time they convened, so not yesterday. And although it had disaster relief in its title, there was only about 12 of the 132-page document. Only 12 of those pages in that large document had anything about disaster relief. And so the governor vetoed that bill, and the Senate overrode that veto. The House is expected to reconvene on Thursday, where they may override this veto, the governor's veto as well, or on the 11th when they're expected to return. And here are just a few highlights from that Senate Bill 382. The $227 million was moved from the savings reserve to be transferred to the Helene Fund. So this is unallocated money. It was simply moved from one place to the other. There's a $50 million transfer from the OSBM Disaster Relief Reserve for allocation to the Office of Recovery and Resiliency to support homeowner recovery projects under the Rebuild North Carolina program. There's language that requires NCORE, so the Office of Recovery and Resiliency, to enter into subrecipient agreements by the end of the year. And then there are also several extensions and permissions made for development permits and other approvals for communities impacted by Hurricane Helene. It's really important to point out, once again, that there's no actual language in Senate Bill 382 giving explicit authority to NCORE or any other department to begin setting up the infrastructure needed for federal Hurricane Helene Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds, or for a program to be launched. The $227 million transfer of funds to the Helene Fund, once again, is unallocated, meaning the money is not actually being funneled into any disaster relief efforts, but held to be used at a later date. No additional rental assistance for Hurricane Helene was included. And just a special note, the public version of the report was made available about 2 hours before the chambers were scheduled to vote. Yesterday, in addition to overriding the governor's veto of Senate Bill 382, the Senate approved Senate Bill 920, which would bring to the ballot in November 2026 a proposed change to the state constitution that sets a maximum allowable income tax rate of 5% for profitable corporations and the wealthiest North Carolinians. We're going to link our a fact sheet, a really important fact sheet from our partners at the North Carolina Budget and Tax Center on the really big problems with this constitutional change and what that would mean for our state and resources. Also, the state Supreme Court race recount continues this week, and Democrat incumbent Allison Riggs continues to maintain a lead of over 600 plus votes. A recount has been asked for by her opponent. The North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency in court is seeking public comments through December 14th on a proposed amendment to the action plan for administering HUD Community Development Block Grant mitigation funds. So this proposed action plan amendment is intended to address the homeowner mitigation needs, including establishing the Residential Property Elevation Fund, which will be used to rehab, construct, or replace properties located in a floodplain or at risk of future flooding. This new fund will help protect properties against future flood damage through structural elevations and related activities. Key point here is that this fund is separate from the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funded Rebuild North Carolina Homeowner Recovery Program, which primarily serves properties that do not need home elevation. A draft of the new Substantial Action Plan amendment for mitigation funding is available for review online. And once again, you have until 5 p.m. on Saturday, December 14th, 2024 to submit any comments. There are several, as we continue to watch Helene recovery, we continue to wait for the disaster aid package at the federal level. We are also following the news as different communities continue to grapple with the need for aid as they come back with water. They still don't have water, and they continue to try and get towards some sort of normalcy. Moving to local updates, there are several churches that are continuing, and this is an ongoing trend, that are continuing to enter or re-enter the affordable housing business. So there is a piece in the Charlotte Magazine that was recently published, and they really take an in-depth look on how congregations in the Charlotte area are using their land to create affordable housing. So the article details about how 7 different faith-based organizations in Charlotte have all developed affordable housing in recent years. In addition, Covenant Presbyterian, Myers Park Presbyterian, and Myers Park Methodist, just for an example, have also each donated $1 million towards the development of affordable housing. The churches have used a variety of tools to put deals together, including tax credits, grants, the city's housing trust fund, bank loans, and financing through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. So for folks interested in learning more about how faith communities can build affordable housing, definitely check out this article in the Charlotte Magazine. St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Raleigh recently donated $300,000 to the Raleigh Area Land Trust for the cottages at Idlewild, a community of 18 affordable houses being built by our fall conference keynote speaker from this year and North Carolina Central basketball coach Lavelle Moulton and his partners at Raleigh Raised Development. Winston-Salem City Council also approved affordable housing guidelines this week, last month. The City Council voted last month to approve guidelines for their affordable housing development program. These guidelines are going to set up a standardized scoring system for affordable housing proposals under review, and the city will begin accepting proposals in early 2025. In a recent article from WUNC, it details the work of the Northside Neighborhood Initiative in Chapel Hill. It's a joint effort between the Marion T. Jackson Center, UNC Chapel Hill, the town of Chapel Hill, and the Self-Help Credit Union, where in 2015 the partners formed a land bank in Chapel Hill's historically black North Side neighborhood. To date, the land bank has acquired 45 properties. So if you haven't listened to our most recent Unlocked podcast, I had the awesome privilege of being able to chat with Miss Kathy Atwater and our very own Hudson Bond at the Marion T. Jackson Center in Northside about property taxes, but also about the importance of community and why community is worth preserving. And with that, as always, we have several events, reports, and resources and news pieces that we can point you to. I'll highlight just a few events before I let you go. Today from 1:30 to 3 p.m., the National Fair Housing Alliance will be hosting a virtual celebration 50 Years of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. There will be remarks by Attorney General Merrick Garland, the CFB Director Rohit Chopra, as well as Kristen Clark, and a special discussion moderated by MSNBC analyst Anthony Coley. On December 5th, so this Thursday, there'll be another virtual event on the impact of rental payments on credit scores and mortgage underwriting, hosted by the Urban Institute from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. So again, this is another webinar. Also on December 5th, there will be a virtual webinar hosted by HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research, talking about measuring housing discrimination and the different findings from innovative methods and future directions for affirmatively furthering fair housing. That's all we have for you today. Make sure you check out the call notes to register for our post-election policy update webinar tomorrow, and also check out all of the great reports and resources that we have for you inside. I hope you have a great rest of your week. As always, reach out to us if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you next time.